The entire hidden mountain expansion of Where Winds Meet revolves around one sect, Mohist Hill. Once you understand the Mohists, Hidden Mountain's story suddenly makes a lot more sense. Because it's based on a real school of philosophy founded by a real man named Mozi. More than 2,000 years before airplanes existed, he was said to have built flying wooden birds. Unlike most philosophers, he literally walked across China to stop wars he had no personal stake in. But here's the strange part. By the time Where Winds Meet takes place, the Mohists had already disappeared from history. So why does the game bring them back? Let's understand their philosophy before getting to why they disappeared. Here's something nobody tells you about ancient philosophy. Most of it isn't really for you. Most famous philosophers spent their lives talking to the powerful. Plato wrote for aristocrats. Aristotle tutored Alexander the Great. Brilliant thinkers, absolutely. But their audience was kings, nobles, and people who had enough free time to debate the meaning of life while someone else did the farming. Mozi came from the opposite end of society. He came from craftsmen, artisans, the people who actually made cities work. 2,600 years ago, China wasn't China yet. 7 warring states fought to dominate each other. Farmers conscripted into wars they didn't start. So, instead of asking what the ideal society looked like, Mozi asked something much more practical. Why do ordinary people keep suffering? And what's the actual reason it never seems to stop? And he found an answer so simple that it sounds insane. He said, the root cause of almost every human atrocity is that people care more about their own group than other groups. A king invades his neighbor because he loves his own kingdom more than theirs. A thief steals because he loves his own family more than yours. Nations go to war because each one treats its own citizens as fully human and everyone else as background characters. You've probably noticed this yourself. When you watch the news, the same tragedy gets 10 times the coverage when it happens close to home. The same death gets way more public attention when it happens in your own country. It feels so natural that people stop thinking about it. But Mozi believed this instinct was exactly the problem. He even came up with a name for it. Partial love. Caring with a filter on. And so he proposed a solution that sounds radical. Impartial love. Care about strangers the same way you care about people you know. Now, before you say, okay, that's just be nice, thanks ancient China, he was not making a spiritual argument. He wasn't saying love everyone because God said so, or because it'll make you feel warm inside. He was making a game theory argument in 400 BC without knowing what game theory was. His actual logic went like this. If you treat my people well, I have strong incentive to treat your people well. If everyone operates on mutual care, everyone ends up with more security, more resources, more stability than if everyone operates on tribalism. Partial love feels natural, but it's a losing long-term strategy for everyone. This follows the same underlying logic that eventually appears in ideas like the Geneva Conventions, like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, like the entire concept of international humanitarian law. Mozi got there 2,600 years ago, with no institutions, no international bodies, no precedent, just the observation that partial love is, mathematically, a collective action problem that destroys everyone eventually. If you've ever believed people deserve help simply because they're suffering, even if they live halfway around the world, you've basically made a Mohist argument. The philosophy of impartial love is the core principle the sect operates around. The game takes it very seriously and applies it to one of the darkest, most chaotic times of Chinese history. The Mohist Hill disciples are repeatedly asked, can you really stay loyal to your principle while you're barely able to feed yourself? Can you really treat others like your own family when millions of people are struggling to survive? But here's where the Mohism sect goes from interesting philosophers to genuinely unhinged in the best possible way. The founder, Mozi, didn't just write books. He actually showed up before wars were about to happen. And his story is so central to Mohism that the game keeps referencing it in the open world. Mozi heard that the powerful state of Chu was about to invade the much smaller state of Song. The military engineer advising the Chu king had just invented a terrifying new siege weapon. The invasion looked unstoppable. Song was basically doomed. Here's something important. He wasn't from Song. He had no family there, no business there. If Song disappeared tomorrow, his own life wouldn't change. But he walked for 10 days to reach the Chu capital. 10 days. On foot. Then, he got an audience with the king's military engineer, and he said, "Let's wargame this. I will defend the country you're attacking." He took off his belt, laid it on the floor. The belt was the city wall. Small sticks were troops. Then they started playing what was essentially an ancient military strategy game. Mozi successfully defended every single attack plan by the military engineer. They tried 9 different siege plans, 9 different defenses. Mozi got 9 straight victories. Eventually, the military engineer ran out of ideas, but Mozi still had more defensive strategies left. Then, the king of Chu looked at it and said something surprisingly practical. "Fine, but I could just kill you. Then nobody can defend Song." Mozi answered, "My 300 disciples are already waiting on Song's walls. They all know these defenses. Killing me changes nothing." In the end, the king had to cancel the invasion. Mozi walked 10 days, beat the kingdom's greatest military engineer at his own game, argued with the king himself, and saved a country he had no personal stake in. Because he believes that if you care about people in other countries as much as your own, then invading them for profit becomes obviously mathematically wrong. That's not just ethics, that's commitment. Before we continue with how the game adapts them, a quick word from today's sponsor, Enjoy GM. If you're looking to buy echo beads for Where Winds Meet at up to 12% off official prices, check out Enjoy GM. Same echo beads, just less money out of your pocket. The $100 pack only costs $88 here. Head to the site, enter your UID, pick your amount, and pay. No account login, no password, nothing sensitive ever gets shared. New users could also get an extra 8% site-wide coupon. Enjoy GM is PCI DSS certified and has earned numerous positive reviews on Trustpilot. Click the link in the description or pinned comment to start saving. Here's the key part that sets Mohism apart from European philosophers. The Mohists weren't just a philosophy club. They were organized more like a special forces unit. They had a formal structure. A leader called Juzi, the Grand Master. Codes of conduct. Members who took real vows. And a very specific mission. Go to wherever a war of aggression was about to happen. Offer your defensive military engineering expertise to the weaker state and do everything in your power to stop it. Here's something fascinating. They never specialized in helping kingdoms conquer others, only defending and rebuilding them. Sound familiar? Because that's Doctors Without Borders. That's the International Red Cross. That's every aid worker who shows up in a country they're not from because human suffering goes beyond nationality. The Mohists had the idea. We built the institutions around the same idea 2.5 millennia later. The game captures this almost exactly. Mohist Hill is described as placing the greater good above personal gain, and the main story zooms in on the heavy prices of this principle at a dark time. But here's where the game makes interesting creative choices that differs from history. At the point of time in the game, the Mohism sect had already disappeared from history. By then, nobody was saying, "I am a Mohist." There were no Mohist communities, leaders, or institutions anymore. Why? Why did one of the most sophisticated ethical systems in ancient history essentially vanish from mainstream culture for over 1,000 years? The short answer: because Mohism was difficult to use for the people in charge. Impartial love sounds beautiful until you're an emperor and it means your citizens should care about enemy citizens equally. Meritocracy sounds fair until you're an aristocrat who got your position through birthright. Eventually, one of the 7 kingdoms conquered the others and unified China. It was an extraordinary achievement that finally ended centuries of constant warfare. But governing a stable empire required a different philosophy. Confucianism, with its emphasis on hierarchy, defined roles, and social order, simply worked better as an operating system for running millions of people. Mohism was built for crisis intervention, not long-term administration, so it got sidelined. But here's the beautiful part. Mohist ideas didn't disappear. They were absorbed into broader Chinese civilization. Some went into statecraft. Some influenced later political thinking. Some inspired modern scholars. Mohism dissolved into Chinese intellectual DNA. That might explain one of the game's biggest creative changes. The real Mohists in history were aggressively public. Mozi kept showing up uninvited to corridors of power. He argued directly with kings. His followers made their identity and their mission known. But in the game, mountains hide their halls, clouds veil their craft. Even their members must wear disguise and keep their identity hidden from outsiders. Why? That is for you to find out. Then there's my favorite detail: flying. In real history, Mozi was said to have built wooden bird flying machines. That's why every Mohist NPC in the game is named after a bird. But the game gives flight a deeper meaning. Like many civilizations across the ancient world, people often saw the heavens as a mysterious realm beyond human reach. The Mohists challenged that idea. Their pursuit of flight isn't just about inventing new technology, it's about proving that the sky can be understood, explored, and ultimately conquered through human knowledge. I think that's one of the smartest adaptations the writers made. After being part of the Mohist Hill Sect for several months in the CN server, here's what I find remarkable about it. Most Sect systems reward power, prestige, dominance, the strongest martial art, the highest damage. Mohist Hill actually asks you to behave like a Mohist, build housing, contribute to the community. Your reputation isn't earned by winning fights. It's earned by building, writing essays, crafting equipment, and contributing to the community. It's probably the only MMORPG where your homework actually increases your reputation. In real history, the Mohist organization was gone, but somehow their ideas survived. Maybe that's what real strength actually looks like. Dynasties fall, armies disappear, yet one belief refused to die: that a stranger's life is worth just as much as your own. And now, thousands of years later, it's waiting for you to discover it again on Hidden Mountain. Thank you for watching.